Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the presentation of the Walther collection. We do have a PowerPoint, and I'll just trail on until you'll see some. Yeah, here we are. To my left, Artur Walther, the man behind the Walther collection. And we will try to present a little bit the story of the collection, how it started, how it developed, and where it's now. And for all of you who plan to come back to Basel next year, please plan in a couple of extra days, because what you will learn today, hopefully, is there's a little village in southern Germany that's called Burlafingen, and that's directly on the way to Basel, and we all hope to welcome you there sooner or later. Artur, before we start to talk about the African part of the collection, how did you get started? How did it all begin?
There was really no, grand plan, or there was no history in the family of collecting. I would say it happened all relatively organically. In the mid-90s, I became very interested in taking photographs by myself, and I connected with a number of artists who really know, like Stephen Shore, Bruce Davidson, Mary Ellen Mark, and Bernd and Hilla Becher. At the same time, I joined the board of the ICP, the International Center of Photography in New York, in the Whitney Photography Committee, which exposed me to a broad array of activities, of research, of exhibiting, of curating, and of collecting. The first, if we actually could go back to the beginning, the first typology I bought was, or the first work in general I bought was typologies from the Bechers, and this here is a typology of gas tanks. And so one of the last ones I acquired is actually these gravel plants, which I found out later on that many of these images were taken in the area I grew up in. So the work of the Bechers for me was very familiar, and their black and white images focused on the object, focused on form and function, carefully constructed, was kind of very much my way of seeing and of looking at the world. And so from the Bechers now to Karl Blossfeld's documentation of plans at the turn of the century, and then to August Sander's examination of an entire society of his time, was very logical and was very cohesive for me. So that was kind of the beginning and the base of the collection. And I then went actually very deeply into this, and I acquired August Sander's Antlitz der Zeit from the late 20s, his first publication.
Now, and after these rather classical beginnings, how did you begin to be interested in Asian and then later on African photography?
Okay, there are various segments and developments, and some of them overlapped. So in the late 90s, I started to travel to China and returned many times, and actually Christopher Phillips, who is sitting in the back, was a wonderful travel companion and an outstanding teacher to me, and I'm actually thanking him a lot with regards to my early view towards Chinese art, and particularly Chinese photography and video. Chinese artists, just go slow, Chinese artists lived very much in isolation and worked very much in isolation up to that time period. And in the late 90s, the situation changed dramatically. They started to do experimental work. They looked at their society and investigated their society. They broke away, a new generation developed, and they broke away from the prevailing realism, from propaganda, in heroism, and actually they broke away from imitation of Western art, which they had pursued very much too. So this new group of artists did very conceptual work, very experimental work, dealing very much with the issues at hand. And we can flip through some of these. Many of these you know. That song Dong. Dealing with the migration from the country to the cities, with the dramatic changes of the cities, the destruction of old parts in these fantasy luxury structures.
And so
now this was a very, very exciting, and I'm just showing a few of these images, but this was a very, very exciting period. You clearly could see when Chris and I we would walk up into these complexes, these housing complexes, 6 floors up, no elevators, these tiny apartments, and these artists would be available in show work. And in comparison now, they live in these mansions and have these factory spaces, and they occupy 50 and 60 people and direct their work. So this, and we clearly felt this was very, very unique and very, very special.
Now, in the summer 2010, you opened your space in Bolafing in Neu-Ulm. You opened an exhibition campus, and what exactly is going on in Bolafing? What exactly are you doing there?
Okay, what the collection had grown at that point in time. So let's keep this picture. The collection had grown significantly at that point in time, and it was in storage, and some of the images were shown in certain exhibitions at ICP and at other places. But I felt very much I wanted to examine the collection. I wanted to work with the collection. I wanted to systematically develop certain themes in thought processes. And so, again, it was circumstances. I think this picture is very compressed, but it was circumstances because I had some property. My mother had passed away, and there was some property in Germany, in this village where I grew up. Actually, we had a number of houses there. And so the idea developed to use these structures and develop a campus. And so as you see there are 4 buildings. 3 of them, we kept the vernacular architecture. 2 of them are these 2-family houses. They were internally changed into exhibition spaces. The third one is a 70s bungalow, which was changed internally. And the 4th building was newly constructed. And the real structure is underground. There is a building underground 4 times the size of the white one you see. So, and that is the scale and the space, you know, to show group exhibitions or significant thematic exhibitions. While in these other houses, the scale is very, very different. So little bit about these buildings are in this small village outside of Ulm, which is in southern Germany. There are the meadows and fields around, and kind of the environment is like one neighbor is working from 7 o'clock in the morning until 7 at night repairing his cars. He has 4 Jeeps. The other is an old lady, and she walks up the street all day long to see who is coming and checking that nothing is happening and so on. So it's very domestic, it's very rural, and there, so the experience you have is, and these buildings are not connected, so you really have to come out of the building, go into the garden, and walk to the next building. And so, so why don't we, yeah, so this is with regards to the structures. So now the program, which we developed, we started out, and now we get into the African part of the collection. We decided to do a very systematic 3-year thematic exploration of contemporary, modern, and historical African photography and video. And we started out last year, the opening exhibition. The theme was Events of the Self, Portraiture and Social Identity, which was curated by Okwuyenbezor. And it entailed 3 generations of African artists from the 1940s to the present. And it looked at various modes of portraiture. Can we just go back one more time? The second exhibition, which, and we will go deeper into these, the second exhibition, which just opened last week, and the public opening is this coming Thursday, is tomorrow, is entitled Appropriated Landscapes, and is curated by Corinne Disserin, and looks at the African landscape, the Southern African landscape, in an equally expansive way as we looked at portraiture. And the exhibition concluding this African examination is next year with a very, very, very special view and examination of late 19th century and early 20th century African photography. So I want to lead you through, and we will flip through very kind of expediently, because I would like you to get a visual impression of the spaces and the exhibitions we did. So this we call the greenhouse. It's now much greener. This is an old picture. And here there was this dual exhibition of the works of Seydou Keita and August Sander. And so it was one floor. Here is an installation shot. It was one floor of about 45 images of Seydou Keita, kind of with regards to this changing society of Mali, of Bamako, from colonial to post-colonial. And we contrasted that on another floor with Antlitz der Zeit of August Sander. And we showed all 60 images. And I have seen August Sander at the Metropolitan Museum in New York, and I felt in these spaces it was a much more intimate and special view of seeing him in this environment. This is we call the Black House. There it was the concept of typology and seriality, and we showed some typologies of the Beckers. We showed Oche Keris, this Nigerian artist, his hairstyles of African women, and we showed the late work of Malik Sidibe with back views of women. And Santu Mofokeng's examination of portraiture in self-representation at the end of the 19th and beginning of 20th century. And he had a beautiful narration to this work. This is an installation shot. To the left is the projection of Santu Mofokeng, and in the back you see the books of Dagan Cronin, who looked at the Bantu tribes of South Africa from an anthropological, ethnological perspective. This is the Beckers and Sidibe. And now this is the white the white box. It has various spaces in it. And there the theme was a figuration and theatricality within the overall theme of portraiture. And it showed the works of Coyote. This is upstairs in the building, looking out into the village. And Samuel Fosso, Ido Barada, Lolo Vellecco, and Sanele Muholi, who has a beautiful exhibition across here. Bernie Searle, Peter Hugo, Hentje van der Merwe, Mikhail Sabatsky, Hazume, and Sami Bellocci. So these are, this is an installation shot. This is a quarter of the space underground. This was an exhibition of 33 African artists and 250 works of art. Now this is the exhibition we just opened, Appropriate Landscapes, which looks at the landscape in a very expanded way and looks very much under layers of meaning which are embedded in the physical attributes of a landscape. So it doesn't look at landscape from a pictorial viewpoint, but it looks at landscape in a very expanded way, in a very broad definition, and looks at landscape too as a construct of memory and mind. And here we have in the Green Building, again a dual exhibition, and that is the works of David Goldblatt and Santu Mofokeng. And actually, Zanele Muholi, who was at the opening, spoke to me and said, this is so unique to see Goldblatt and Santu Mofokeng together in that extensive. We never would see that in South Africa. So this is the work of, now this is the work of Santu Mofokeng, who kind of looks at the townships and life in the townships, who looks at spiritual life, and who looks at landscapes of trauma. In landscapes of trauma, that is now in the Black Building again. There is an exhibition of Cho Radcliffe's work, of an investigation she did of 60 black and white images of the Civil War, the 27-year Civil War in Angola. And she looks at the markings in the land. And these are these very idyllic pictures sometimes, but it's really minefields or battlefields or mass graves or memorials of this long, devastating war. And now we are in the white box again, and here we have modernism, modern architecture in post-colonial, now in present-day post-colonial Africa and Mozambique. This is the work of Guy Tillem. We look at architectonic structures. These are the work of Michael Sabatsky, who spent 3 years in the highest apartment tower in Johannesburg, which basically was abandoned by whites and is now full with squatters. And he very systematically, over these 3 years, photographed out of every window. He photographed every door, every screen. And we are showing a big body of his work there. This is again Sanele Muholi, who looks at the landscape of the body and looks at identity. And this is Sabelo Malangeni, who again looks at identity in the landscape. Jane Alexander. And now the color work of David Goldblatt. This here is asbestos remnants. These here are abandoned farms, abandoned houses, migration. And before, as with the works of August Sander and the Beckers, this time to have a cultural dialogue, we are showing Mitch Epstein's American Power series, which is these production sites of energy in the United States, the invasion of the landscape there, to show a comparison, or to be able to make a comparison of pictorial strategies from an American artist and African artist.
Now, this is already quite demanding, I suspect. We've been through 2 years in those 3 buildings, and as if this is just not enough, you also opened a project space in New York, right?
Yes, 2 months ago we opened a space in New York, and the idea was there to give a glimpse to a different audience of actually this extensive work we have been doing in Germany. And so what you see is Cho Radcliffe's Terras do Fim do Mundo is exactly the same exhibition we are doing currently in Germany. So we have been showing that in New York, and it was unbelievable attention we got onto that. But Cho Radcliffe had never been shown in the States, but at the same time there was in a small exhibition at MoMA actually, there were a few images of hers. And then we are showing in the fall this comparison, or this dual exhibition of August Sander and Seducator. And then in January we will do a preview of the photography from the 19th, early 20th century. So we get a glimpse on that, which will then be expanded significantly at the exhibition, which will open in June of next year in Germany. And then we are planning to do individual shows on Fanny Coyote, on Guy Tillum, and on others. So in New York, that is a view of the space. It's it's a modest space, but it's sufficient enough to over a period of time very consistently, and this is a non-profit space, very consistently show African photography and video. Maybe you talk about
for those of you who want to take something home, we don't sell them, but part of the work of the foundation and the collection is not just to produce these exhibitions, but each exhibition is accompanied by what I would call an extensive catalog, and Gerd Steidl has
a lot of sweat.
Gerd Steidl has done wonders on
these.
Beautifully produced books. This is the first one for the events of self, and that is the one that just came out for appropriated landscapes. They're usually accompanied by essays, and appropriated landscapes has something very wonderful. South African writer wrote extremely poetic bios explaining the work and life of the artist from a point of literature.
And there too, we asked actually the artists to provide suggestions of work, either their own writings, because many of them are prolific writers and readers, or texts or literature work which impacted them significantly with regards to the work they did. So this is actually something very, very special and very beautiful.
So appropriate landscapes will be up for a year?
It's up for a year, yes.
And what's going on then?
Yeah, I mean, then there is this examination. This is then the third part of 19th century, late 19th century, early 20th century. And maybe you do the next one. And we look at that from a multitude of angles. So we look at it from the work of artists today. And this is Mary Kay Weems, who took imagery from the 19th century and overlaid them with her own narrative. We look at it from Santu Mofokeng's work, which I had shown before, where he has his narrative with regards to looking at these images he found and collected. And we look at it, for example, again, this is a work of Zanele Muholi, And now we are going into late 19th century work, and I'm just showing you a few of these images. So this is very interesting with Zanelli's work you just saw. In the examination world, there we will have several, there will be a lot of research with regards to the work. Very little has been written about this. And there are these whole topics of, you know, who is the photographer? Why are these pictures taken? Who is the sitter? Was he there because he wanted to be photographed, or was he asked? Was he forced? The role of the woman, the African woman, and the representation of her body, the commercial underlyings of a lot of this work at that point in time, the authenticity of these images from a historical, from an ethnological perspective. And so, for example, that is, oh, and then there are all different means. So this is, for example, from an album print, but there are carte de visites that part of the collection is a beautiful assembly of 57 carte de visites from Kimberley, the mining town in South Africa. There is the slide presentation. There is daguerreotype, et cetera, et cetera. So we are looking at it too from kind of the means of representation.
So,
so that is then Africa, and that is concluded at then in 2013. And then the plans for the following years, and I can talk 1 or 2 more minutes. The plans then for the following years is away from this concentration on a culture and this thorough examination of this culture, but we are looking at practices. And so, for example, when you look at these images, my way of collecting is very much driven not by the individual image, but it's very much driven by a series of images, or it's very much driven by a typology in groupings. And so I want to do an exhibition which cuts across all different cultures and different practices, and kind of the theme I have is typology, seriality, taxonomy in photography.
And that will include Chinese or
that will
Asian.
include Chinese, American, Asian in general, German, all across. And then beyond that, the idea is to look at China in Asia in a similar way as we looked in Africa.
Alrighty, time's up. So thank you, Artur. Are there questions from the audience? No? Thanks for coming. Have a good day.